Good afternoon, students. Today we'll start the class with previous classes summary. What we have discussed in the previous class. In the previous class, we have discussed how the consumer behaves. What do you mean by satisfaction? Consumer behavior we have discussed. What do you mean by satisfaction? We call it as utility. And what do you mean by problem of choice? What is consumption bundle? How we can measure utility? First one is cardinal. We are measuring utility, and second one is ordinal. Right? So when consumer has income that is limited, he has to choose between the goods which is available in the market. And we already discussed that the assumption here is we have only two goods in the market. Suppose we have only two goods, apple and banana. Okay, so having these resources, he has to choose between the goods available in the market. That we call it as problem of choice. He has to choose between the goods which is available in the market. And because why we call it as problem of choice, the reason is the resources are very limited. If the resources are unlimited, then he can go for a number of goods he wants. But as we have the resources are very limited, if he has 100 rupees, then with this limited resource only, he has to select between the goods which are available in the market. That's why we call it as problem of choice. And next is, as we know, we have only two goods in the market, and bundle is when we say we have apple and banana. If we mention this 8 and 10, this combination says that 8 pieces of apple and 10 pieces of banana. The combination of set of two goods, the combination of set of two goods, we call it as consumption bundle. Correct? I'll repeat, the combination of set of two goods, we call it as consumption bundle, or we can say bundle. So these things we have discussed, and as we said, we have discussed so many examples how that satisfaction level changes by place, people, time, and age. So many factors are there. That is why the utility, the satisfaction level is subjective. Subjective in nature. So here, whatever we discussed in the previous class, we can expect questions like this. What do you mean by utility? What is consumption bundle? Like that, we can expect the questions. Utility means, how we can say, it is utility is the want satisfying capacity, the want satisfying capacity of a particular community. the want satisfying capacity of this community, we can call it as utility. Okay, so and this is subjective because whatever community the product which is giving us satisfaction, it varies from place to place, person to person. If some product is giving me more satisfaction, it doesn't mean that the same satisfaction level will be there with the other person. That is why we call it as subjective. So you can answer in this way. And what do you mean by consumption bundle? It is combination of set of two goods. We call it as consumption bundle. We can say combination of amount of two goods. Combination of amount of two goods. Let's say x and y, which we can represent in number 8 and 10. So here combination of amount of two goods x and y, apple and banana, which are apple in quantity 8 and banana in quantity 10. This combination of amount of two goods we call it as consumption bundle. So these are very important small topics we need to understand here. So when we say utility is satisfaction, but how we can measure the satisfaction level? It is a bit difficult to measure the satisfaction level, but we found out the way to measure how much we satisfied. How we can measure the satisfaction level? In terms of cardinal utility analysis and ordinal utility analysis. In using these two methods, we can measure the satisfaction level. That we discussed in the previous class, and today's class we will try to understand more in detail about what do you mean by cardinal approach and what is ordinal approach. So we are in the second chapter, that is theory of consumer behavior. Measuring the utility. The first method is cardinal utility analysis. So, what do you mean by cardinal utility analysis? Or what do you mean by cardinal approach of measuring the utility? If we try to measure utility in terms of numbers, if we try to measure the utility, the satisfaction level in terms of number, then we will tell that it is cardinal approach. We are trying to measure in terms of number. So we can say if the utility is expressed in numbers, we call it cardinal utility analysis. Okay, so here we are using the numbers to measure the utility. To understand it better, we will take an example. Okay, I have purchased a new shirt. So, what is the utility of that good? So, I would say the shirt gives me 50 unit of utility. So, I am trying to measure the satisfaction level of buying new shirt in terms of numbers. So 50 units, it gives me satisfaction level. So it gives me satisfaction of 50 units. Okay, so when we are specifying the numbers, we are trying to measure using cardinal method. So in this approach, we have two things to understand. One is what is total utility, and another one is what is marginal utility. So what do you mean by total utility? Total utility means it is total satisfaction derived from consuming n number of commodity X. Okay? It is total satisfaction which is derived from consuming n number of commodity X. So what do you mean by that? So we will say commodity X means you can say this is apple. The commodity which I am considering here is apple, and the quantity consuming n number of apples. How many? I can say 10. The quantity I am specifying here 10. So when I say that I consume one apple, so what is my satisfaction level? When I consume two apples, what is my satisfaction level? When I consume three, like that. When I consume 10 apple, what is my satisfaction level? So it is total satisfaction level of consuming total n number of apples, that gives me total utility. Correct? So total satisfaction that we derive from consuming 10 apples. So what is total satisfaction when I consume 10 apples? That gives me total utility. Okay? So what is marginal utility? The marginal utility, we can say the change in the total utility due to consuming additional commodity, due to the consumption of additional Okay, so marginal utility means the change in the total utility due to consumption of additional amount of commodity X. So we can use the numbers to understand this concept. Hope you can see this. So I will read it again. Marginal utility means it is the change in the total utility due to consumption of an additional amount of commodity X. So what do you mean by that? So we'll use numbers to understand the total utility and the marginal utility. Here units, utility, total utility and marginal utility. Okay, so I'm using units here, and what is the utility, the satisfaction I'm getting by using these products. So I have one apple and I ate this apple. My satisfaction level, I can say 12 units. How much? 12 units. By eating one apple, my satisfaction is, in numbers, it is 12 units. I am satisfied by 12 units. So when I ate second apple, for this second apple, my satisfaction level is, it is 6 units. Okay, so when I ate second apple, my satisfaction level is, if I want to measure that in numbers using cardinal approach, I will specify the number here. I'm satisfied with 6 units when I ate second apple. Okay, now I'll eat the third apple. When I eat the third apple, my satisfaction level is 4 units. Okay, when I eat the fourth apple, I'm not satisfied because my satisfaction level ends here. Okay, I don't want to consume the fourth apple here. That is why I don't have any satisfaction for having fourth apple. But when I have the fifth apple, I'm already 0 here. My satisfaction level is 0 here for this fourth apple. When I eat the fifth apple, it goes in negative. The satisfaction level is negative. So minus 2. The utility is minus 2 units here. Now, so we discussed this in the previous examples. Suppose I'll say, we'll take one more example here. We have kid here, okay? So, in the morning, we give him a glass of milk, with that, a slice of bread, okay? So, he can eat maximum 2 bread pieces. When I give the first slice of bread, his satisfaction level is high and he eats this slice. But when I give the second slice, his capacity is 2, even he likes this also and he eats that as well. But when I give the third slice, he didn't like that. He started rejecting. He started feeling not good about having the third slice. But still, he have that also. When I offer him the 4 slice, he will say, no, I can't have this. I'm full and I'm not feeling good at all to have this 4 slice. So here it is negative here. So we can say negative by 2 units. Here he had that, but the satisfaction level is 0. Here he felt very good. He was very happy when he had the first slice. The second slice, still he is happy and he had that. But third slice, it is 0, and in the fourth slice, it is negative. The satisfaction level is negative. Okay. So this is how we can measure the satisfaction level when we have different units of commodity. Now, how to find out the total utility? From one slice it is 12, and second slice it is 6. So, first slice the total remains same, it is 12. For the second apple, we have taken the commodity apple here. So, for second apple, for this particular apple, the utility is 6 units, but when we consider the total utility, it is the utility level for first apple plus utility level for the second apple. It is 12 plus 6, 18 is the total utility when we consume 2 apples. It is not the second apple, but when we consume total 2 apples, a total utility is 18. When I consume, listen to me, when I consume not the third apple I am talking about, when I consume 3 apples, my total utility is 18 plus 4, or we can say 12 plus 6 plus 4. So it is 22. The total utility by having 3 apples is 22. That we can say total utility. When I have this 4th apple, there is no additional satisfaction level, so it remains same, 22. Correct? So there is no change in the total utility. It remains constant at this level. This is very important to understand. So I am repeating here, for 3 apples, the total utility is 22. But when 4th apple, when I had, there is no addition to my satisfaction. It remains constant here. Because the satisfaction I had is 0 for this 4th apple. And so when I consume 4 apples, the total utility remains same. When I had 5th apple, the utility is negative for 5th apple. So my total utility will be 20 minus 2 is 22 minus 2 is 20. See here, the total utility, it starts increasing. Total utility at nth apple. If it is the nth apple is 4, then my TU is 22. If my nth apple is 5, TU 5, the total utility at 5th commodity is 20. You can say it is equals to 20. Okay. Now total satisfaction derived from consuming n number of commodity X. Here we are considering the example of apple. So the total satisfaction from consuming n number of commodity X. So this gives us total satisfaction. Now how to find out the marginal utility? So as per the definition, the change in the total utility, there is a change in the total utility due to consumption of additional amount of commodity. Okay, how to understand that? So when I consume first apple, the total utility is 12. My marginal utility also remains 12. There is no change in the total utility because I am having the first apple. There is no change in the total utility. But when I consume an additional amount of commodity X and additional amount of commodity, when I consume one more apple, additional amount of apple, what is the change in the total utility from 12 to 18? What is the change here when I consume the additional apple? What is the change in my total utility? This change in the total utility when I consume additional apple is, it gives me marginal utility. So what is the change here? Previously when I consume first apple it is 12. Now when I consume second apple it is from 12 to it increases to 18. The change here is 6, correct? So how to calculate that? We have an equation here. Mu n is equal to Tu n minus Tu n minus 1. Okay? So Mu n marginal utility at n unit is equal to total utility at the n unit minus total utility at n minus 1 units. So we will put the numbers here. Marginal utility at I'll take this 4 or 50 can say. Mu 5. What is Mu 5? Marginal utility at fifth apple. What is my marginal utility at fifth apple? So now I have to take the Tu5 total utility at fifth apple minus total utility at 5 minus 1. That is, I can say 4. Correct? So total utility at 5 is 20. 20 minus total utility at 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is fourth apple. The total utility at fourth apple is 22. 20 minus 22 gives me minus 2. This is my marginal utility. Okay? So I will check that one by one. So the same way, if I place here marginal utility at second apple, so total utility at second apple minus total utility at 2 minus 1. So total utility at second apple is 80. I am finding out marginal utility for second apple. Okay, so total utility at 2 it is 80 minus total utility 2 minus 1, that is 1. The total utility at first apple it is 12. So 18 minus 12 is 6. Correct? So that is my marginal utility at number 2. So what is my marginal utility at third apple? The same way we need to calculate. Total utility at third apple, that is 22 minus Tu at 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1, that is the previous one. If we are considering third apple, the previous apple is second apple, right? So Tu3 is 22 minus Tu2, that is 18. So 22 minus 18 is 4. Correct? By marginal utility at third apple is 4. So we can say the change in the total utility. The change in the total utility when the additional consumption of additional commodity. From 2 to if I eat additional apple from 2 to 3, then what is the change in my total utility? From 18 to 22. So that gives me 4. This is my marginal utility. Correct? So the mu at 4 is 22 minus 22. 22 minus 22 is 0. Okay, so mu at fourth apple is 0 here, and mu at fifth apple is 20 minus 22, that is minus 2. Correct? Now we'll see this 640 minus 2. 640 minus 2. The data here, it speaks. Literally, it speaks. If you analyze the data, it is telling so many things to us. So, it says marginal utility, there are so many laws. We can explain those laws by understanding this table. So what the table says, the marginal utility, initially it is very high, okay, then it started decreasing. When we increase the number of commodities, the marginal utility starts decreasing from 12 to 6, 6 to 4, 4 to 0, and again it started going in negative. So when it starts going in negative, when the total utility remains constant, and starts decreasing, when the total utility from constant, then later it starts decreasing, that time the marginal utility goes in negative. Okay, if you see the table here, the total utility, it was at third apple is 22, it remains same for the fourth apple. After that, it started decreasing. So when this total utility decreases, the marginal utility, it goes in negative. Okay, so here again by the definition, what we understood here is the change in the total utility due to consumption of additional amount of commodity. The change in the total utility due to the consumption of additional commodity, it gives us marginal utility. Fine. So here we understood what you mean by total utility and what you mean by marginal utility. And the formula here is marginal utility at n is equals to total utility at n unit minus total utility at n minus 1 unit. This is the formula to find out marginal utility. Now we'll try to graphically represent this data. Okay? If we graphically represent this data, how that curve's graph looks like. Okay. So from the childhood, we learn, right? We have x-axis, y-axis. Okay. So here, I will put in the x-axis the commodity apple, and in the y-axis, I will mention the utility. Okay, so y-axis represents utility and x-axis is a commodity. Okay, so when I consume, I have 5 apples here. I will 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3 apple, 4th apple, 5th apple, 6th and 7th apple. So we need this. Okay. So and we have utility level maximum curve. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 9, 11, 12, 13. So this is utility we measure in terms of numbers. This is utility numbers. Okay. So when I consume first apple, my utility is 12, right? So first apple, it is 12 dot 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 till 12. Here we have a point. So when I consume first apple, my utility is 12 units. Okay. Now, when I consume second apple, my utility is 6. Second apple, utility is 6. For the third apple, it is 4. And for the fourth apple, it is 0. Here. For the fifth apple, it is negative. You can say the fifth apple, it is negative here. Fine? So it goes in -1, -2. So here, this is for fifth apple. Okay? So this is about marginal utility. The marginal utility for first apple is 12. When I increase in the number of apples, there is a decrease in the utility of that particular commodity. For second apple, it reduced. The third apple is still reduced, and fourth apple it is 0, and fifth apple it went negative. Okay, so I'll draw the curve here. If you use exact measurement, you will get nice graph. If for fourth is 0, and for fifth it is -2. Okay. You can draw it very neatly using the scale and all. But here you can understand one thing, and again you can expect a question in exams. How this is marginal utility curve. Okay, how this marginal utility curve looks like. This is convex to version. You can say this is convex to version. Okay, it is like this. The curve is like this. Convex to version. Okay, you can say this. It is the marginal utility curve is convex to the original. This is our marginal utility curve, but we will take this data as well. Total utility, it is 12. We need to go up like this till 20. Okay. I'll draw one more here, graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Okay. This is about total utility. This graph is for total utility and this is for marginal utility. Now I will represent this data here. For first unit, the total utility is 12. Let's say it's here. For second unit, it is 18. For third unit, it is 22. For the fourth unit, it is same again, 22. For the fifth unit, it is 20. Okay, if you draw a curve, these are the points. Okay, total utility curve here. It started increasing for second and third. For the fourth, it is constant. It is not increasing. So it behaves in this way. It increased, and after third apple, fourth apple, it is constant, and for the fifth apple, it is declining now. So it is started diminishing, right? So here, this total utility initially it increases, later it reaches the peak and it starts behaving neutral. It is constant here. After that, it started declining. This graph looks like this, and marginal utility graph, it is convex to version, and this is in this shape. It is 12 here increase, but when we increase in the number of commodities, the utility starts decreasing, and after some point, it goes in negative. Correct? So this is the graphical representation of total utility and marginal utility looks like. But now, we will try to understand what is law of diminishing marginal utility. What that law says. I'll keep the data. We can use that for our explanation, for our discussion, for our understanding. So now we understood total utility, marginal utility. Now what is the law? What this law says? Law of diminishing marginal utility. What this law says. This we know, we already discussed that also. The marginal utility we know, this is change in the total utility by due to the additional consumption of this commodity, right? So how this marginal utility curve behaves, that says all about this law. how it was behaving? Initially it was high when quantity utility, right? So when the quantity is first unit, the utility is high, then we increase in the quantity. When we increase in the quantity, the utility curve starts diminishing, decreasing. So that is what law all about. When there is an increase in the quantity, the utility starts decreasing. That we call it as law of diminishing marginal utility. It is very simple. So we will put that in words. The marginal utility from consuming each additional unit of commodity declines as its consumption increases. Marginal utility from consuming each additional unit of commodity. It declines as its consumption increases. When we mention this, the other things we will keep it constant. We can say this by keeping the consumption of other commodities constant. Okay, so the law of diminishing marginal utility says that the marginal utility from consuming each additional unit of commodity declines as its consumption increases. As the consumption increases, the marginal utility declines. Correct? So that's what we call it as law of diminishing marginal utility. When we have taken only one product, we are keeping the consumption of other products constant. We are not making any changes in other products, but we will deal only with this product, and we will try to understand how this marginal utility behaves for this particular commodity. So I'll read it again. Marginal utility from consuming each additional unit of commodity declines as its consumption increases. The marginal utility declines as the quantity of this commodity increases. Okay, this is the law of diminishing marginal utility. So that we explained with an example, the kid having slice of bread. When he starts having more bread, the utility, the satisfaction level started decreasing. Correct? So that is law of diminishing marginal utility. So next, in this cardinal approach, we have one more small topic. We will discuss that and conclude the class, and ordinal method we will discuss in the next class. The next, otherwise it is okay, we will discuss that very clearly and in detail in the next class. The topic is demand curve. Again, will not do that in a hurry. So as it is already times over, so we will discuss that topic in the next class. The next topic in cardinal approach is demand. What is demand and what is demand curve? Demand is nothing. Demand is a willingness of a buyer to buy that product, and he should have the capacity to buy that. It is not only the willingness to buy. It doesn't mean that if I have the willingness to buy so many products, we won't call it as demand. I should have a willingness and I should have a capacity to buy that product as well. Then how this demand curve looks like, that we will discuss in the next class. Okay. Thank you. Have a good time.